Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's I, your reluctant gringo, back again with another new movie review. Yes, I got to see the movie Weapons last night, and it was overall a very fun and enjoyable movie. Is it a perfect movie? Was it the greatest horror movie in years, as some people are saying? Is it the next Stanley Kubrick? No, it's not those things. It's a solid horror flick. It has a lot of suspense. It has some thrills, some jump scares, some little bit of everything, really. It has some flaws, but overall, really enjoyable. And I think horror fans are going to enjoy going to see this film. I think general audiences are going to enjoy seeing something a little different after the deluge of blockbusters over the summer movie release schedule. So yeah, it's a little bit of a different flavor, a little bit of a different thing. So I think it's going to make some money. And I think word of mouth is really positive on it. Now, we'll get into it in a second. As always, I like to start out with the good before we get back to the negatives. But let's start out with the general plot. This is going to be a spoiler for your review. The general plot is one night at 2:17 in the morning, 17 kids, all from the same classroom, get up, leave their house in the middle of the night, walk or run into the darkness, and disappear. Now, that's the premise. You get all of that within the first 2 or 3 minutes, and you pretty much get all of that within the first trailer that you've seen before even going to the movies. So you get right into the story, right into the disappearance. And of course, the main suspect and one of the main characters, played by Julie Garner, who is Miss Gandy. She is the teacher. And of course, there's one kid left in the classroom, and that's Alex. He's played by Carrie Christopher, who did a wonderful, incredible job. Probably the best performance in the film. All the performances were great. We'll get into them in a second. So that's the premise. Now you've got police, the FBI, you've got all the parents in the entire town wondering where these kids are. They can't find them. You have to have some suspension of disbelief because you're thinking to yourself, if there was a town in the United States where one day we woke up and 17 kids were missing all at the same moment, same time, and it involved the FBI, it would be international news and the place would be just swarming with reporters. Not the case here. That's not how it goes. Seems like everything's very low key, and you have to understand that the police have no clue, the FBI have no clue, there's no answers, there's no nothing. That's part of the story and how they get there and how they get to the end. Now, talked about Julie Garner. Great job as Miss Candy. For that whole, she's sort of like that final girl kind of role, if this is a traditional horror film. Josh Brolin, Thanos himself, as Archer, as one of the fathers, the father of Matthew, one of the kids who disappeared. Very enjoyable part in the film. He really sort of was that antagonist part in the beginning because he needed an antagonist because he didn't know what's going on. He didn't really know who the true villain is. So he plays that antagonist role, but very sympathetically because he's a father whose child up and wandered out in the middle of the night. Now he's missing. And a month later, he still doesn't know where he is. Along with the other 17, stressed out, he's angry, he doesn't know what to do, he doesn't know how to go about things until he starts to get a few ideas. The other two main characters you're going to get introduced to are Paul, the police officer, played by Alden Ehrenreich, and you get James, the sort of meth junkie or junkie for everything. It looks like he's into everything. One of my favorite characters in the entire film. These two actually bring a little bit of comedy, dark humor to the whole movie. It kind of changes the pace up when you get to their part of the story or how they're involved. Now, James is played by Austin Abrams and does a great job with this character. You get a sense of dread and terror. You get a sense of like what is going on here from him. And he actually gives us our first look into what might be really going on with the disappearance of the kids. And I've heard people compare this film to sort of Stanley Kubrick type horror films. And I don't see Stanley Kubrick exactly. I see maybe some little techniques taken, maybe a little, homage given to Stanley Kubrick by leaving little clues in the background as to who's doing what or what might be behind all this stuff. But it really didn't remind me of Stanley Kubrick. It really reminded me of Quentin Tarantino. The way, like, if you go back and watch Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction, how there's multiple stories of characters that once you start to interweave them and tell them, you get a fuller picture of what's going on. So I saw more Tarantino-esque in the narrative format and the storytelling format than anything else. Now, that's fine, right? Stanley Kubrick, Quentin Tarantino, the greats. Who's going to fault anyone for maybe stealing a little bit of technique from those two? Really, after the introduction, that's sort of the format the film follows. It goes from introducing Miss Gandy and her story to Archer, Paul, to James, the back addict, meth head, whatever you want to call him, and then finally to Alex. And then you get an idea of who the villain is in the story. That is where the film splits. First half of the film, incredible. Tension, anxiety, questions, don't know what's going on. Way in which it's shot using perspective and distance to build that fright, build that scare, tracking shots. So the cinematography, great, incredible. The way in which they tell the story, really, really effective. It's probably its biggest strength. Its cinematography next to its acting. A lot of people say this is a very original script. It's great. It is an original script, but it does have flaws, and we're going to get into that because the second half turns more into a rushed feeling. First half of the film is very methodical, very paced, very deliberate in everything that it does. But as soon as it gets to that second half, it seems like everything's rolling downhill to get to the end as fast as we can. Sometimes it feels a little uneven. It doesn't destroy the film in any way or sense or form, but it's there and it is noticeable in that change of pace. I also call this film psychological horror, which it is. Suspense, all that. There is gore in it, right? I didn't expect as much gore going into a psychological horror film, but there is some scenes that get gory, bloody. So if you're squeamish with that kind of stuff, just know that it's coming. It's not a surprise when it does come. It's very telegraphed. So if you need to look away and you'd be like, I don't want to see that, you can do that. So the other negative you get to with this film is the suspension of disbelief. This is a horror film. This is a suspense film. It's a fictional tale. You have to go in there with suspension of disbelief because you're thinking to yourself, any small town in America that just lost 17 kids, are going to go house to house, door to door, tearing everything apart until they find those 17 kids. They're going to surround the place with police, the FBI. It's just, the reality. Everything's going in a lockdown. Well, that doesn't happen in this film. It's sort of like everything kind of goes back to normal. It's like you're missing 17 kids. You know that they all ran out in the middle of the night. You don't know where they went. They couldn't have gotten far. Not even canines can track them. So you have to have a lot of suspension of disbelief with things like, okay, that doesn't make sense in real world. You're not in the real world. Let it go. The biggest drawback to this film is its villain. The villain is very enjoyable when it's revealed. I thought it was very creative in the way it was done. However, you never get a sense of exactly why the villain is doing what they're doing or what their motivation is. You get a little bit, but there's so many gaps you have to fill in for yourself. There's so many questions you have to answer for yourself. Everybody can walk out of that film with a different idea of what the villain was. Halfway through the film, I thought to myself, this is a film about vampires. So it's completely wrong. It felt that way. I felt like, oh, this is a vampire film. This is going to turn out to be something like there's a master vampire in the town and that's what's going on. And nope, totally wrong. But you do get to that villain reveal and what's going on with it. You still walk out of the theater going, what exactly is that person? Or what are they doing? Is it magic? Is it paranormal? Is it something darker? Is it something demonic? So you never get those questions answered. You're sort of left at the end going, fill in the gaps for yourself. That can seem like a letdown to some audiences, and some people in the audience, some viewers of the films like that, enjoy that. I like the ambiguous ending. So you're going to have split audiences coming out of that once that ending finishes up and goes from there. It ends quick. I mean, as soon as the climax happens, boom, credits roll. A lot of humor and dark humor injected into the climax, which seemed anticlimactic, right? You've got this big terror. You've got 17 missing kids. You've got stuff going on. You're like, okay, this is bad. This is terrifying. This is horrifying, right? And then when you inject too much humor at the end to sort of lighten it up and make the audience feel a little bit better, it really kind of becomes anticlimactic. Like I said, it sort of feels like, oh, that didn't live up to the hype, what I thought I was going to see. So our problems with the script, and it's mainly around the villain, the use of the villain, the reveal of the villain, the motivations of the villain, and how the villain actually meets their end. So thoroughly enjoyable film. It was fun to watch. It was a fun time in the theater. If you're looking for something a little bit more adult, a little bit more enjoyable, something with a little bit more different thrill, I think Weapons is your film. And I think this weekend Weapons is going to do very, very well. I think it's probably going to end up being number one. It's going to fight with the Naked Gun, number one, I think. And I think Weapons is going to ultimately win out because it's got such great word of mouth. That's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I thank you for watching from somewhere south of the border. I'm still your reluctant gringo. Salute and a huevo.